Okay, welcome to another episode of Pilates Elephants, wherever you are in the world. I'm really glad to be here with you. I'm excited to be here today with Simon Bryce and Amanda Dell'Aquila, and we're going to talk about something we've never talked about here on Pilates Elephants before, which is franchising your Pilates business and the journey of growing from being an instructor to being a business owner, to being a multiple business owner, to being a franchisor. So someone who sells franchises to other people. So welcome, Simon. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, can you guys introduce yourself, Simon?
Yeah, my name's Simon Bryce. I am the founder with my sister Amanda at Mission Possible Fitness, Pilates and PT, and I've originally started down in the park, boot camp. I'm a personal trainer. Amanda's a Pilates instructor. That's how we formed our brand. And we've gone on from there to, as we're talking about today, into not just into our own studio, but franchising those studios out to other franchisees and growing forward.
And you're based in Sydney, Australia?
Sydney, yes.
Amanda, hi again.
Hi again. My name is Amanda Dell'Aquila. I am Simon's younger sister, and as he said, we have been growing a business. Younger sister, that's right. We have been growing a business over the past 10 years. And it's been a journey.
So what I want to talk about today is that journey from, starting in the park to, or maybe I want to pick it up where you had a studio and moved to, growing to your present size of, you have 5 locations, 2 of which are company owned, like you guys own the studios. And then you have 3 franchises that are owned by other people, but you franchise the system to them. So I want to talk about that journey. And there are 3 sort of aspects of that I really want to tease out. And the first one is just the journey of growing your business from 1 studio to 2 studios. So this is not really part of the franchise journey, per se, but I think this is something I see a lot of people, a lot of people I talk to who have a studio, when I ask them what's the future hold for you? The answer is studio number 2, obviously, is the natural progression of that. And that was my experience. I had a studio, I opened a second studio. And after, looking back on that experience, is there's a lot of things I could have done better about opening a second studio, a lot of illusions I had that turned out to be not true. I'd like to understand your journey there. And the second thing is that moving into franchising, which is an incredibly, as I understand it, incredibly complex, involved process to set it up. And just a really interesting business idea that we've never discussed here on the podcast before. And the third thing is I'd like to discuss is your personal growth, both of you, through that process from starting out as what I, lovingly refer to as a naive trainer. That's how I started out. I knew about Pilates, but I didn't know shit about business when I started my business. And I wonder if that was the same for you. And if so, how did you navigate that journey from okay, I know how to get someone strong, but I've got no clue about finances, marketing, sales, operations, hiring, all of the rest of it. And how do you go from that to owning one business, owning multiple businesses, franchising businesses, now leading a team of leaders who lead businesses, that skill set growth and that mindset growth that you must have experienced over that journey. So those are broadly the 3 things I'd like to talk about are the journey from 1 to 2, the journey from being owning the business entirely to franchising it, and then your personal kind of growth and journey through that. So let's start out when you had your first studio. So, and then, when you expanded out to the second studio, or when you're starting to think about expanding out to a second studio, because this is something I see a lot of people, like I said, they have a studio, they think, oh, great, I want to open number 2. But often actually what I see, and this is with the benefit of hindsight, because this was a mistake that I made, is that I see people with their first studio is nowhere near optimized. They're probably at 60% capacity in their first studio, and they're I want to open a second one. And I always say, hey, look, I advise you to maximize a profit in your first studio before you open the second studio, because all you're going to do is multiply your risk and expense and stress by 4 and reduce your profit. So, yeah. So tell me about how you made that leap, and was that your experience?
Yeah, it was a large leap. It was definitely a lot of risk along the way. I would say that you don't need to have you 100% positive about every single answer in your head. It's a bit of an 80-20 rule. I think it's a bit of an entrepreneurial thing, is that you don't need to have every single box ticked before you move forward. And that includes the studio that you're currently in, and the going forward, whatever your steps may be, whether it's just opening another studio or actually franchising a system. So for us, it was Amanda, myself, and Nicole, one other instructor that ended up becoming a partner, but it was just us 3. We didn't have the size that we have in that same one studio that we do right now. That one studio has grown dramatically since we started the franchise process. So it shows that you don't have to be completely maxed out or every little crinkle ironed out 100% in your first business. As long as I think it's a personality thing. If you feel that you're adaptable, you can move fast and be decisive on what's going forward, and make just educated decisions financially. And you talk to enough people around you, have good network. I think they're big major factors rather than the fact of just having things ticked as such to move on forward.
So that's fascinating that your first studio grew through the franchising process, and I want to ask you about that in a minute. So tell me, tell me about your journey from 1 to 2, and when did you start feeling like, oh, it's time we opened a second studio?
Yeah. So when we had one studio, it was doing really well. We had it open. We'd moved from another place, and then we'd opened our first studio that was essentially our own a few years in, and we thought, how do we grow this bigger? Like, what's the steps of how to grow our brand and our footprint bigger without us being in every studio? And you either 2 studios, okay, cool. You can get a manager, get some instructors. If someone's sick, you could probably jump in for them. It's not going to happen at 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and that only happens with 2. So that was the point where we just had to make a decision at that point, saying, oof, maybe franchising is worth the idea, but let's just look into it and see what's involved, which I found was quite a lot, and 6 months worth of pain, what I would call. So that's how we come about that decision.
It's interesting to me that it seems from what you said that it was a goal for you to step back from the day-to-day operations of the business. And Amanda, I know you still run sessions, and Simon, I know you're still involved in doing like you work full-time on the business, but it was your goal to step back from, presumably running PT sessions and et cetera. And so, was that kind of part of your vision from the get-go? Because it seems to me that most people who start a Pilates or personal training business, their vision is to teach Pilates, right? Not to sit in some back office with an Excel spreadsheet, looking at KPIs. That's not the sexy bit for most people. So tell me about that trajectory for you.
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever have an actual office, by the way. I'm not an
it's
office.
A reformer.
In my office. Yeah. It involves reformer rooms and cafes and so on. So I like to be on the move. But there's big steps there. There's so much to think about, because when you're in your own studio, you've got everything in front of you that you're in control of. And how do you step out of that without... There's an emotional part to that too. You've got potentially long-term clients that you've been with 3, 4, 10 years, however long. And it's that, how do I pull back from that and not hurt anyone's feelings? And you have to look at the way you change your whole identity. It's an identity crisis, essentially, that you're changing. You're pulling away from being a personal trainer or a Pilates instructor or whatever your skill set is to now a business owner, a franchisor, and you're leading and mentoring people underneath you.
And I think as well, there's when we kind of went from 2 of us to 3 of us, and we were all, I think, basically at capacity in the studio, there's a point where you have a lot of conversations with people, you get a lot of like-minded clients, and then you start drawing in instructors. And our first initial franchise was an internal sale. And it was from someone who saw what we did and loved what we did and wanted to duplicate it with us on board, and our assistance and our guidance to duplicate it, 10 kilometres down the road, basically. So yeah, there was a lot of and then we're kind of drawing other instructors in, and you slowly kind of, there's that sort of period where you're starting to build and work on something else, and where at that same time you're building up other instructors to essentially fill that, so that there's not a void for those clients as well, that they don't miss you, and that you can go in and out and do what you need to do.
It sounds like a lot of this has been driven by just taking advantage of opportunities that presented themselves, and then basically driven by necessity. So you had to remove yourselves from the business, so you had to train up other people to fill that, and that's sort of a natural part of building a team and becoming a leader. What were your aspirations, if any, when you started the studio? So you said you went from, in the park, teaching PT in the park, to opening a studio. Was there a point where you were like, yes, we're going to build this global, empire, and there'll be one on every street corner, be like McDonald's? Or did you have grand kind of aspirations at any point, or did it just kind of grow organically as opportunities kind of popped up?
Yeah, I think if you talk to any franchise, I've spoken to many fitness franchisors, and I didn't even know what franchising was until I looked it up. I didn't know the difference between sales and marketing, to be honest, until I really started delving into these things. So all these things that you think back at the park and or people that are working within gyms and renting out space and things like that, you're only thinking ahead 1 or 2 steps. And I think until you've completed those 1 or 2 steps, then you've got the brain space to be able to think of another 2 or 3 steps, or 1 at least. So, and then maybe prioritize them.
And have your ambitions grown as your business has grown? Are you now thinking more steps ahead and think like, oh, we could, we
Absolutely.
could make this
Yeah, I don't. But the steps that I think ahead now, I don't even know how I'll achieve. I'll just know I'll achieve them at some point.
Yeah. There was a point, I think, in that initial phase where Simon was quite gung-ho and makes decisions and moves quite quickly, and I kind of, pull him back a little bit and go, hang on a second, let's talk about da-da-da-da-da. And there was that kind of process. And now I just let him go. You can't, initially it was a lot more, our steps were a lot more careful. But yeah, we seem to have found the balance initially between the 2 of us, where he was doing one side of the business and I was kind of concentrating on the other, and it just worked. And we thought, well, this is working. It works. We can do this. We can duplicate this.
And so how do you divide the labour? And was that something that you agreed on before you started, or did it just kind of naturally happen as you each kind of just did the work that was most natural to you?
I think it was natural. I think I'm a very people orientated person, so I was doing all of the marketing and clienting and converting clients, and that was my job. And it started off dropping leaflets in letterboxes and turned into Facebook, then turned into Instagram. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of progressed from one stage to the next. Whereas Simon handled a lot of the financial side and sort of, getting the pricing and accounts and all that kind of thing. And then it got to that point where there was, I guess, too much. We had to get a bookkeeper, and so that's that first person that you bring in, and then the people you bring them in one at a time.
You mentioned before that I guess I'm thinking about this growth, which seems to have been kind of pretty organic, and even just the division of labour between the two of you seems to have been quite kind of organic and unforced, and that you've taken advantage of opportunities that have popped up because a client or an instructor within the business wanted to invest, and then so you're like, okay, great, we better hire someone else, and we better train them up, and we better make a system to train them up, and then all of a sudden you're sort of creating this business that has processes and systems in it. And I think back to something you said right at the start there, Simon, which was that the first studio grew through the franchising process. And I understand that the franchising process basically is the process of you documenting exactly how you build and run a successful business, like this. So it's like, here's how you acquire a client, here's how you service a client, here's how you charge, here's how you market, here's how you do your financials, here's how you all of those processes. And so was it the case that in the act of documenting those processes, you were like, oh crap, well you actually realized, oh, that's how we should be doing it, and then you actually got better at doing it by teaching by documenting it?
Definitely. And I think along the lines of being continually adaptable, that builds that awareness, but there's no solid, written in stone type scenario. It will change another 10 times in the next 10 years, I'm sure. So it's about being adaptable and, yes, looking for those opportunities and modifying to suit. So it is important that, and how that first branch grew massively within the time that the other franchises were opening and growing. It just shows how strong branding is and how important marketing and branding is. It's not just a physical aspect of just multiply my marketing and multiply my sales and get a few extra instructors and off you go. There's power and weight, real weight behind solid branding and marketing that will help every single person. If you think of any large brand in any industry, the more they get, the less they need to market, because they're marketing themselves by purely being in front of people. They're physically being in front of people is the marketing. So therefore they have to spend less as far as outsourcing is concerned. And if they don't want to, they might have growth path, of course, and a certain way they want to have that trajectory with their company as a whole. But if you wanted to just grow at a medium or slower pace to keep control of things, you could definitely pull back in what you invest into marketing as a whole.
I want to come back to the marketing conversation in a minute, but firstly I want to ask you, why did you kind of alluded to the fact that, somebody wanted to buy in and start another place the same, but 10 Ks up the road. But how did you decide to franchise rather than, say, just do a partnership agreement or some other, thing? Like, why franchising?
After I investigated it, I felt that there wasn't another path that I would be able to multiply to 5 studios plus. That was the only way. You could do partnerships with 2 or 3 people, plus the risk of partnerships in themselves. There's a high chance that that can break up at some point. So, you don't want. It's all right to have 2 studios and two partnerships, but 20 studios and 20 partnerships may not be as happy landing. So that's where I investigated the franchise system. People that were able to create systems for you, basically the template, and they would manage that. I didn't come from a corporate background. So myself, I had it in my head what was needed, and I thought what would look good, but I didn't know how to put that onto paper and be able to present that properly. So that's where you really have to dig in and find the right people that can do these things for you if you're not in that way inclined. And there's legal aspects, there's lots of legalities and large costs in setting these things up. So like any small business, you need to be able to prepare to dip down in finances to be confident that you're going to come up. And that's a bigger dip than a small business opening up. So, and of course, then following a franchise system is that you actually have to get franchisees. Then you've got to use the system that you just invested into.
Right. And so they do say that, the spending has to precede the revenue. You have to spend the money before you earn the money back. And that, I believe to a certain extent, that is true. Obviously you have to spend the money on advertising before you get the client, however, it's not always true that when you spend money, you get it back.
No.
So that
That's
dip,
for sure.
that dip can be quite scary. And I've been there myself a number of times. And sometimes it has, a period of growth has followed the spend. And sometimes it's just been, no, we just spent the money and now we just have less money than we had before. And there was no growth.
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's been multiplying, even through COVID. It's a great example, and I don't like to go on about COVID too much, but we all went through it, and we all had closures, and that's a big eye opener when it comes to resilience in the business and being able to adapt in those times and do what you can do with the clients that you have and the equipment that you have, and know and have the confidence that you will come through the other side. That's where many people will fold, and that's why the majority of small businesses do close within that first 5-year period, because they just can't. They don't know how to adapt continually and be resilient for lengthy periods of time, well over 5 years.
Yeah, when we first opened our studio in Melbourne in March 2007, we were very innovative. We were the first Pilates, first group reformer studio. We had apples and tea and nice music and smelled nice, and people were friendly when you walked in the door. And we were like, people came in like, holy cow, this is really different. This is amazing. But then fast forward 3 or 4 years, and it's like 30 or 50 Me Too brands open up. And now it was totally normal to have tea and nice music and group reformer and whatever. And so people walked in like, oh, it's just another group reformer studio. And so even though we had been incredibly innovative, by kind of just sitting on our laurels going, oh, aren't we awesome because we're the only ones doing this, all of a sudden we weren't the only ones doing this, and we were just one of the crowd. So you're exactly right. I think you have to continue to innovate and you have to kill your darlings, basically. You have to make your own offering obsolete by coming up with a better offering that's more fitted to the market as times change. I want to go back to what you said about marketing a moment ago, and I want to broadly sort of generalize that out a bit more, because I'm interested in your relationship, the two of you, in a business sense that, you both started out in the park. Okay, so you're both presumably running around witches' hats and doing push-ups and whatever. Okay, because there's not a lot of someone doesn't get to be CEO when your business is like teaching personal training sessions in the park.
I was just the boss. I was in charge.
When there's more trainers than there is clients.
Right. But now you have actually, you have a very serious business. You have 5 locations. And so, Simon, your day, I'm guessing, looks a lot like meetings and KPIs and spreadsheets and looking at analytics and things like that. Whereas Amanda, I know you still train a lot. You see clients. So how has your relationship kind of grown or changed, or, as the business has grown, has that sort of relationship, the business relationship between the two of you changed and evolved, Amanda?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we first started, I can relate to what you were saying before, because we were the first, we were the first studio in our area that did Pilates and PT, and we're one of many now. And I think our relationship has always been the strength of the business. We've always, I guess even at first, we've always had each other's backs, and we've always had that. We discuss everything. We communicate well. We don't fight. I think one time we had a disagreement over a timetable, and I cried. Like, that's the extent of us. It was pretty upsetting. That's the extent.
That's not times. That was a breaker.
It's pretty emotional for me.
Yeah.
But that's.
I cried later too.
The schedule can be very emotional. I agree.
Yeah, it's tough. Tough decision making.
Tough. It was tough, but our communication has always been well. And we are both, essentially, both Simon and I are very driven people, and we're very driven for our own goals and our goals to grow. And any time that we have dipped down in the business, it's all been all hands on deck, and we all, we pull in and we just work together. We have a great relationship in that sense.
Amanda, how has your role changed? Because you said before that you're responsible for the marketing, and that's transitioned from letterbox drops, and I can resonate with that because we used to do that, to social media and Facebook and Instagram and yet you're still training in the studio and Simon's not. So has your role, I guess I'm interested in how has your role changed from studio number 1 to studio now 5? Are you doing the marketing for all 5 studios, or do you have a system where the studios do their own marketing? How does that work? Yeah,
we do have a system in place now, and I guess it's changed in the way that I guess as Simon has been moved into those sort of franchising, dealing with the managers and doing all that kind of thing. My role has been to stay on the ground and to cover across that and making sure everyone's happy. Like, I do actually work in 3, sometimes 4 of our studios, and my presence in those studios is important to those owners, those managers, and the other instructors as well as making sure that that the clients are happy and all the processes are kind of going ahead as we would like them to go ahead in studio. And the marketing, essentially, now we do have a team that gets across a lot of that for us, but we still do a lot of general posting, and we like to do we like to do things in our community as well. We've done charity walks, and we've done fundraisers, and we've sponsored teams, and we've done kids stuff, and we've done, we've stamped our name in the area to the best of our ability, and we've been locals in the area the whole time. So there is a presence as well that I guess Simon and I need to have in the studio. So if Simon's, not there, I like to be present, and I love my job, all aspects of it.
And do you see yourself as the business continues to grow? Because I'm taking from reading between the lines from things that you've said that you're not done yet, that you're going to continue to grow the business. So, well, firstly, am I correct in that? You have further aspiration, yeah. So as you grow, how do you see your role changing, if at all? Like when you're at, say, like, I don't know what your aspirations are, but let's say when you're at 50 franchises, are you still going to be doing the same thing you're doing now, or do you see that changing?
I guess I see it probably changing. I mean, my first aspiration was just to be a good Pilates instructor, and then my second one was to be the best one in the Hills District, and then my next one was to be even better than the best one. And if there's more out there, I want to know more in order to facilitate what I do for people. So I always have a growing hunger for knowledge, more knowledge. The more I know, the more I can facilitate and do my job better. And I love that. And as well, now, I guess with having the franchises now, I get to share that information. So me coming to you giving me knowledge, I passing it on to, other instructors, we're sharing that knowledge and that information. There's going to be that constant growth. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like in 5 years or 10 years, but I know it's going to be awesome and exciting, and I'll just change and adapt, I guess, as we move along.
So your role now is really training or product, right? So you're responsible for the quality of the service provision. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And Simon, tell me about your personal, your professional growth, and also I'm interested in the mindset shift predominantly, actually, from PT in the park, to studio owner, which, when I opened a studio, I kind of imagined myself just like teaching Pilates, but it's like, it's my name on the door. It's like, I didn't imagine all of the other things that I would be doing as a business owner, that actually as a business owner, I realized like, oh crap, I'm actually not spending the majority of my time teaching Pilates now. I'm having performance conversations with staff. I'm talking to the marketing. I'm doing, all these other things. And then to multiple business owner, and now you're leading a team of leaders and, doing a whole bunch of other stuff, which I'd like to understand a bit more about. But I'm interested in your mindset shift from, and you said your aspirations have grown a lot over that time as well, where in the back in the park days, you were like, oh, let's come back next week. That's about as far as it went. And I was like, oh, maybe we could open a studio. It's like, oh, maybe we could franchise it. Now, now what are your, how have your ambitions, expanded? Yeah. So tell me about that mindset growth and shift for you.
Yeah. I've had mentors all along the way. I think it's important as you become higher up in your own business and you have people under you that ask you for advice and you want to develop them along their ways, that as a business owner, it can be a lonely world. You don't have anyone else above you that you can ask questions to, right? So you can join networks, you can ask other businesses if you're friends with other people that own other fitness businesses. But it's very hard to get real depth on growth and have someone look at you from a bird's eye view, I guess you call it. So there is a lot of identification shift. You have to learn to compartmentalize. There's time auditing, which comes in with compartmentalization. If you are someone that seems to drag on things, something goes wrong in your day, do you think about it for 2 hours? Does it go on for 2 days? Does it drag everything else, on with your week? Or can you get over it in 10 minutes and maybe deal with it later if it's a bigger thing and quickly shift gears and move on? So there's many of those things around mindset, which took me well over a year, to be honest, to be able to really dig deep and be aware and on a daily basis that if something did go wrong, if it's not going quite my way, hey, look, it'll be all right. Let's just deal with it later. I've got to do these other 3 things first. Let's just do them to the best of my ability, and then I'll deal with that, and we can. It'll be okay. It'll be fine. It's not the end of the world.
That's amazing. Amazing that you figured that out in just a year. I've been working on it for a decade.
Yeah, it's. I'll talk to you later about it. No, I'm joking.
So, just as a frame of reference, like what's roughly what revenue is your group at the moment annually?
Franchise.
Yeah, like for the whole business, like what's the revenue at the moment? Just so people have a frame of reference.
I think revenue as a whole, we're looking at about $6 million a year. So, just getting started.
Okay, and congratulations, by the way. That puts you in the top. Goodness knows what 0.5% of all small businesses. So that's certainly an achievement that you guys should justly be proud of, and it's an admirable thing that you have managed to do that. And it's interesting because we're at about 4.5 million at the moment at Breathe Education, and it's interesting that when I've got a sort of gold record on the wall here from the year I made my first $1 million. I was like, oh my goodness, it's like I've made $1 million. That's amazing. But it's like life just goes on, like you still have to pull your pants on one leg at a time in the morning, and you still have to mow the grass. And the kids still ask you, what's for dinner? What's for dinner? It's like, I don't know what's for dinner. Like the days are still pretty normal. But you do have different sorts of problems in your business. So a $6 million business is kind of like a $60,000 business in that it's you're just solving problems all the time. If it's not one thing, it's the next thing. But I think the quality of the problems changes, or the size of, you just got more zeros on the end of things, and you've got more people problems. I think in a larger organisation, there's a lot more communications issues, a lot more meetings and accountability cadences and things that have to be managed. Whereas when you're a 2-person shop in the park, it's like, well, everyone knows what's happening because like you were both there the whole time anyway. So how has your day, what does a day look like for someone who runs a $6 million a year Pilates and personal training business? What do you do all day?
I see myself on level. I think one of the big ones for a start is that I don't see myself above anyone. I'll go into the studio and do a workout with them. I'll do a PT session for some, whatever. Like I don't see myself as their boss. I don't even like anyone using the word boss. It's just annoying. I'm just part of the team. And we all help each other out. And that's a big one, because this is where Amanda's done really, really well, is be able to implement like very, very strong culture and be very good with that, picking people from the start, whoever they may be, whether an instructor, PT, a salesperson, cleaner, whatever, anyone that's part of your business, it's really important that they're part of your culture. They're involved in, you have a lunch out together, they're all involved. You're doing a team education day internally, you get everyone involved. And it's all about just trying to do things together and picking people that are in a similar mindset to yourself. So if people are more selfish, you'll find they're the ones that don't come to all those things, and they'll soon fall off the side, right? And the strong ones will remain. So I think from the get-go, culture is the absolute number one, which you're asking about my day. That is a big part of me just having that discussion with Amanda. That's what Amanda and I would speak about. What's happening at this studio? What's happening at that studio? How are they going? Is there any issues? What we would like to implement next month? We would get all the studios together every single month and ask what would they like to implement? What would they see going forth? And that would be my job then, to make sure I look at who needs to be involved in implementing those tasks and how we can get that within that 30-day period, so it's done by the next time we meet in the next 30 days. So my day is all about communicating with the other teams, sales staff, how they're going, KPIs, managers, anyone being away, studios covering other studios with instructors if need be. All those communication lines are open.
Amanda, I want to come back to that in a minute, Simon, but Amanda, how do you define a strong culture, and how do you filter for that during the hiring process? And how do you hold people accountable to it after once they're working with you?
That's a great question. I think that when we are hiring people, we are definitely looking for people that are like-minded to us, like Simon said. And I'm very aware when I'm having a conversation with someone where what they're interested in. Are they interested in being an instructor to help people, or are they after the dollar per hour? Where's their mind? Where are they at in their family? Can they be on board for 6 hours a day, or can they only do 2 hours once a week? And I think that what happens in that process is when people, not everyone's going to stay. You hire people, they're not always going to stay. Some will stay for a short time, some will stay for a long time, and people can move on, and that's okay. And they all leave a stamp, I guess, on the studio. But I do find that we do tend to keep the good ones and attract the good ones. And with the other ones that perhaps their values align differently with ours, they tend to peter out a little bit, or they stay for a while, or they start working at lots of other studios, and that sort of process. Don't need to do a lot. That kind of tends to happen naturally. But I do find as well, but even with new instructors, sometimes you don't know, and and they don't know either, because they're just learning, and that's okay too. So giving that communication and support, a lot of the time that communication, the weekly meetings, the monthly meetings, the team meets, the lunches, the coffees, the check-ins, all of those things are all about communicating and putting fires out before they get started. And that's really important, because if we're across everything and we know kind of where everyone's at and what's going on, to the best of our ability, at least people can, feel free to, instructors can come to me, they can come to their manager, things can get discussed, if people need time off, it's easy because we kind of know where everyone's at.
And as you grow, I have found the same thing, that the biggest part of the communication becomes a bigger and bigger part of the job, because when you have a team we have 28 now of people around the world. You guys must have more than that. I'm guessing with 5 locations, you must have like 60 or plus people working for you, right? Yeah. So it becomes really difficult to implement changes or even hold people accountable to things, because a lot of those people probably have never met each other or work different shifts and aren't on at the same time. And how do you roll out these changes? And it's really easy for the left hand to do something without the right hand knowing about it, or vice versa. And so it becomes basically an organizational tax of, you have to have meetings and accountability cadences and coffees and team meetings and, whole club meetings and whatever, just so everyone knows what's going on and everyone stays on the same page. And we see that, I think, as often a negative thing about lots of meetings and blah, blah, blah. But it's actually, that's what makes an organization work, is that communication and people getting together and making decisions. And so I'm interested, Simon, to go back to, what you were saying before about, your day is basically communicating with people and, basically filtering up the communication of like what's going on the ground from Amanda and from the studio owners, and then also filtering outwards. It's like, okay, here's the new initiative we're going to do, or here's how we've got to improve our performance or whatever. So what do you see as the most important skills or mental frameworks to develop to grow your business? Because, you don't spend much time teaching people how to do push-ups these days, right?
No, I do. I still touch base on a couple of sessions early morning, so I'm always free by 8 or 9 a.m. Even if I do that, so I've got a full day. I don't mind staying on the ground a little bit and touching base with clients I've had for many years from the get-go. So, and that might be a weakness of mine, but I find it also keeps me intact and keeps me fit.
I think it's a strength. I've done both in my businesses. When I ran a studio, I started out teaching 20 sessions a week, and I was just like nose to the grindstone teaching. And at one point, eventually I transitioned to where I wasn't teaching any sessions. And this is when we were doing like $2 million a year in one studio. And, we had like 1,500 client attendances a week, 42 staff. And I was like, oh, Mr. Big Shot, I'm the CEO. I don't dirty my hands with, dealing with the clients. And I just got, now that wasn't exactly what I thought, but I became basically aloof, and I think I got too big for my boots, and I really lost touch with what was happening in the studio, on the reformers, and stuff started happening that wasn't the way I wanted to happen, but I didn't know because I wasn't there and I wasn't with the clients and I wasn't, going, oh crap, this reformer carriage is cracked, that needs fixing, and that's just the stuff that you only notice when you're using the equipment and you're using the change rooms and you're talking to the clients and they're going, I couldn't find a parking spot this morning because so-and-so parked their trolley there or whatever, and so, so I think it's very valuable. And now, even in my business now, I do a lecture or two a week, and I'm very active in Slack with our students. I think that's crucial for a leader of a business of any size to walk the halls, figuratively, and be in touch with what's going on. Otherwise, I think you're making decisions in an ivory tower, and you're going to get it wrong more often than you're going to get it right. So anyway, I support what you're doing. I think you're doing the right thing. But back to the question of, what do you see as the most important skills or mental frameworks to grow your business, to transition from trainer to business owner to, scaling a business?
Yeah. I think from trainer to business owner, I can see the massive step involved where you find a place, you can you see yourself in this place with it all fitted out and Pilates gear everywhere. It's looking amazing. But I think at least having good knowledge in sales and marketing for number one. And that's, I haven't done any, certified courses at all. It was me just looking online, seeing what other people are doing, joined a mentor group, which they educated in part that in regards to the fitness industry anyway. And it's all about getting active, right? Getting your foot in the door, getting active. So, you can only get better with something that you practice yourself. So you have to get in and just do it. Like I said at the start, when you go to that big step, whether it's your first studio or multiple, from one studio to multiple, there's always going to be an element of 20 or 30% that you really just don't know. As much as you think you might know it, it's just, you need to be adaptable and be aware that it's guaranteed that things will change. I can say that. It's just not realistic to say that what you put on paper before something starts is going to be exactly how it's going to roll out, because it's just not. I think you're setting yourself up for failure if that's the way you think things are going to proceed.
If you want to make God laugh, show him your business plan.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So it's a bit of like, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's a bit of that, but I think it's only 80% of that.
I agree. I think it's important to have a plan, but I think it's important to understand that your plan is probably not what's going to happen. So you've got a starting point from which to improvise. So, all right. So sales and marketing, I 100% agree. I think they're foundational skills. I think they're probably the most foundational skills for any business, because every business is in the business of selling something to someone. And if you don't sell your product, that's the end of the business. So yes, I agree. Sales and marketing. And I also agree with the adaptability piece. That it's interesting that you said that as a skill or a mindset. I'm not sure, but I agree. And maybe it's because I don't, haven't cracked the code of business yet, and it all just seems chaos and random chance to me. But I really feel like building a business is like jumping off a cliff and assembling an airplane on the way down. And I think it is much better to be agile and able to change course quickly and course correct quickly. It's much better to do that than to be really, really good at planning. Although I agree with you that some degree of planning is important, but circumstances change so quickly, market forces change so quickly, and often you just get it wrong. Nothing changed, you were just wrong. And you thought, oh, we'll do this and it'll work. And then, oh no, that didn't work. Oh well. So you have to be able to change. So sales and marketing and getting comfortable with change. Were you always like that? Were you both? Now, Amanda, you said you're the force of, like, oh, let's take a deep breath and count to 10 and think this through before.
Do some breath work, everybody. Let's meditate on it for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But you said, Amanda, you have kind of stepped away from that role as the business has grown. Is that because you are more comfortable with change now, or because you've realised, okay, no, Simon's right more often than he's wrong, or why is that?
Don't let him know.
No.
Don't
Really.
say it out loud. I think that there.
That's untrue, by the way.
I think that I've just learned, and as in individually and in our partnership as well, that we've fallen flat on our face a couple of times, and we've always come up and out of it. And sometimes you've just got to keep going and keep doing what you're doing. And when you know and you trust and you believe in yourself as a brand, as an instructor, as a company, which I have 100% faith in, our business and our brand, you can't fail when you have that mindset. so it doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes. But yes, I guess my holding him back a touch and let's plan and let's do this has kind of, it's kind of loosened a little bit, because I've seen over our experience that when we have fallen, we fall fast and we get back up. That's it. You fall fast, you get back up. You just go again, and you may have to change and it may have to look different, and that's okay. That is, that's what a business should be doing anyway. We don't want it to stay the same. So that growth is inevitable, and if you're embracing it, it's not as stressful as trying to control it.
Do you think, going back to something that Simon said before, and just puts me in mind of what you just said, that the ability to kind of face those setbacks or, minor disasters or major disasters with equanimity, like you said before, someone's like, okay, there's this terrible emergency, and you said like, oh, well, I've got these other 3 things to do, so I'm going to focus on those first, and then I'm going to get to this when I'm ready. Do you think, Amanda, that the ability to face those kind of disasters with equanimity and sort of not get emotionally attached to the outcome is a crucial part of that ability to be agile and to change, like, because you're not attached to, it's like, oh, well, we fucked up. That didn't work. Okay, let's not make the same mistake again, and let's move on. Do you think that's an important?
I think that all the time.
Absolutely. And there's a whole lot of personal growth in there, because I think that if you're sitting in judgment of others, you're sitting in judgment of yourself. So there's like, when you're not sitting in constant judgment of yourself, you do sort of, I guess, loosen up around those areas and accept that, we are going to make mistakes. And I'm pretty sure the first long-term client that left because she moved, I was pretty upset. I was personally offended. And it's you learn to.
She did move to another state.
Just to leave you guys. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was going overboard.
I think she's trying to get away from me. I think she was trying to get away from me. But it's but I think that it's you have these experiences, and you grow off everything, and there's always, the thing I love about studios and the thing I love about being around more people and more instructors is I am always learning. Every conversation, there is not a day. I think I did maybe 6 hours of work this morning, and I learned so much in 6 hours, and I talked about a million different things with people, and they moved and we laughed and they were in pain for some of it, and it was fantastic, and we had a good time. And I love that we're always learning in our business, and that's amazing.
I want to go back to the learning piece in a minute. I want to ask about mentoring and where you go for mentoring, because one of the things I've found as my business has grown is it's got harder and harder to find mentors who are ahead of me in the same business and who I respect and want to learn from, especially within Australia. Like, I've had to find people outside of Australia. So I'm interested to understand how you find a mentor and what you look for there. But before we go there, I want to ask your indulgence to tell me about a time that you guys fell flat on your face. And for me, there's been so many, I think in the last 2 years, I've spent over $1 million trying to break into the American market, and probably about 950,000 of that has been wasted. Well, when I say wasted, hasn't returned a dollar. It's like just money that was in my bank account that is no longer in my bank account. That's
marketing costs.
Yeah. And over that time, there's definitely been things that we've learned from that. We've learned 5,000 things that don't work about how to break into the American market. And I think now we have learned one way that does work, because actually now we're succeeding, and more than half our clients are coming from America now, which is great. So, in one respect, that's like money well spent, and that was just the cost of learning about that market. But during that time of losing that money, I had to let people go. I had to downsize the business. I had to, we made a negative profit, which is another way of saying we made a loss last year of $3,000, which is not a lot, but it's we could have made $500,000 profit if we hadn't have wasted all that money on Facebook ads or whatever. So, so there's been plenty of opportunities for me to not achieve my goal. So last year I said, we're going to make $10 million. We're going to break into the American market. We didn't. And we didn't. And this year I'm saying the same thing, and it looks like we're going to succeed this year because we're well on track for it. So that was like one short example of somewhere that I've fallen on my face, and I said it very quickly, but it was very painful. We had to let people go. There was a lot of heartache involved in that, and a lot of fear and anxiety from the people remaining in the company about like, will I be next? And so there was some really tough times around that, mistake or learning curve or fuck up, whatever you want to call it. So now I've gone first, and you guys tell me about a time that you fucked up.
I've had heaps of them. It's my favorite saying about is fail forward fast, and you've only got so many units in your day. If you've got 100 units in your day, it's like how much time will I spend? It's with the compartmentalization thing. How much time will I spend doing something forward? And how many of those units will if I use those 20 units thinking about something else and someone else and what's this person doing over here, it's not really getting me anywhere. So using that time, but failing has become the biggest way to move forward. And it's not just a saying that, sort of sounds cool or, potentially true, but the more you fail, the more you realize that is the way forward. You can't just wing it and be 100% successful in every single move that you make. And that's the whole part of being adaptable. One of the biggest leverage points of our whole story was before we even got into our studio. When we left the park, and we were sort of in the park at the same time, but we went into a trampoline arena, we hired a mezzanine floor, a 200 square meter mezzanine floor for 4 years. This is while we were still doing boot camp, and we did quite well there. We were doing mat Pilates at that time. So Amanda was mat Pilates. I was doing PTs. We started a trampoline fitness company, and started doing adult trampoline fitness because there was trampolines in this big kids center. But that was vandalized heavily. We just got there one day and the place was closed. Someone had slashed all the trampolines. They'd thrown buckets of paint over all the floors, including our own. We couldn't even get into the place to get our own equipment out. And there was a class full of people with Amanda standing out the front going, what do we do now? So that was a major, major turning point for us. That was the point where we could have quit at that point quite easily. We could have gone, let's just go, this is too hard. This is just we must just go get a job. So we went from, we went to Amanda's backyard. We quickly adapted once again. We said, Amanda lives closest to the studio. We know boot camp. Let's get these guys that are in the studio to do boot camp and mat Pilates from Amanda's backyard. That afternoon, we're mowing lawns and making it all pretty and emptying out a garage. And, it's being decisive and adaptable extremely fast in the most worst scenarios, which for us at that point was a very, very hard scenario. We both had young kids as well. We've got all families and everything to think of at the same time, home loans, all that stuff was there. So, and within that time, why we changed, and, the majority of those clients supported us and came still. We still had to think we had an extremely cheap rental deal at that place because we were renting a small floor space. And we're only paying $1,000 a month. It was nothing. And we went from that to going, okay, we have to rent somewhere that's close to the same space we're in because of the center for the clients, but everywhere is like 5 times the price, literally. So we found a place. It was $5,000 a month. We had 3 months free rent, and we knew we had to get to at least, from the 20 members that we had remaining after some that left, we had to get to at least 80 members just to come close to being square. And that was with mats in one room and PT gear and boxing gear that we had to go and rebuy in another room. There was no hard equipment. There was no squat racks or reformers or any hard equipment whatsoever. So that was a major, major turning point for our business and our mindsets, and how resilient you can be. At that point, you can either turn around and go back to good old jobs, the thing that you left to try and progress, or you can step up and move forward. So that was a It makes me emotional thinking about it. This was
And isn't it interesting that
that was probably one of the biggest times we've dug deep to a point of complete broke. So personally broke, no members broke, like everything broke and completely in a hole as far as going forward. So that was a massive failure at that point only, but it's also been our biggest success.
It has.
And isn't it interesting that, and I feel you because I've been there, like we didn't have our trampolines slashed, but I've been at that point where it's like, do I just quit now and move out of my house because I'm going to be evicted from my mortgage, or do I pull some kind of rabbit out of the hat and and figure out how to make this work? And I've been there multiple times, and what I've got from my experience, it sounds like you guys have got the same thing, is once you do that a couple of times, you're like, I can do anything. There's no way this business can break me. Like I'm gonna succeed no matter what. And going into this most recent round that I just described of where we've let people off, because we've had to let people go like 3 or 4 times in the history of this company. And what I know now is, and what I knew going into this last round of where we had to let people go, is like, we are never going to fail as a company. Like I will do whatever is required to thrive and survive in this business. Like there is nothing that I won't do. I mean, short of murdering someone or whatever, but I mean,
maybe.
I know. Well, let's talk about it. So there is nothing like there is no hard conversation that I won't have. There is no cost that I won't cut. There is no, thing that I won't try. There is no, late night that I won't work in order to make this work, and I can see, from both of you that you have the exact same, determination and mindset. And I think that comes from going through those experiences, which at the time are incredibly unpleasant. But, funnily enough, when you look back, for me anyway, it's like I'm kind of proud and feel good about what I did, even though at the time it was shit, it was terrible.
Yeah, the bigger the failure, usually the bigger success that you shoot out the other side. As long as you can be resilient and know that what you know can push you forward, if you can just get over that hump, you will multiply tenfold.
Well, I think that's admirable what you guys did. I think that that shows me that you are incredibly resilient, resourceful, and flexible thinkers, and that you just do whatever needs to be done. Like that's awesome. The round of applause. Well done. So I want to go back to the mentoring question, because Amanda, before you mentioned, education is a big thing. And I know you were talking in the context of learning from your clients and et cetera, but earlier, Simon, you mentioned mentors. And I think for me, mentors have been incredibly important. I've found that my personal experience has been, as I've built my business, because like I said, when I started a business, I didn't know thing number one about business. I didn't even know what marketing was or sales. Like you said, I knew nothing. And I didn't even know that I didn't know anything. I just thought, how hard could it be? Anyone can do it, And so and so as I've grown as a business owner and learned lots of hard lessons by doing it wrong, and then learning, oh yeah, I should have paid that tax bill on time or whatever, and then, but maybe I should get an accountant so I know what tax bills I've got, to pay, et cetera. So I've learned those hard lessons and hopefully won't have to learn the same lesson again twice. But as you grow, what I've found is that you get really good, so the skills you need to run a $1 million a year business are not the skills you run at PT sessions in the park, right? You have to learn all these other skills. So you learn these great skills and you're like, great, I've got this $1 million business. Now it's grown to $2 million. It's like, oh, great. Now I need different skills, because a $2 million business has a bigger team, and you need to be able to run meetings and hire people and do leadership and, hold people accountable. And all of a sudden you've got this skill set of running a $1 million business, but you're running a $2 million business, and then your skill set catches up. But by that time your business is at 4 million, and it's like, oh, my skill set's still not where it needs to be. And so it's been really a challenge for me to find a mentor, because I want somebody that's been there, done that with what I'm doing. And it's like, well, when I look around Australia, there is no other Pilates business that's doing what we're doing and is ahead of where we are. So I have to look overseas. And even there, it's like, oh, well, there's no one, I mean, none of our competitors are going to mentor me. So I have to look into other industries. Like I go and find people who are in sales and marketing in the online space or whatever. So I'm interested in where you go to find them. So 2 questions. First, where do you go to find a mentor? What do you look for in a mentor? That's kind of one question. And the other question is, has it got more lonely as you've grown? Because what I've found is, you know, I basically can't discuss business with most people in my acquaintance now, because like their idea of business is what my idea of business was 15 years ago, which is like you start a corner shop or whatever, you know, whereas I'm now thinking with this lots more zeros on the end, and, you know, I'm thinking marketing and strategy and people and all of that. And it's like all of that is foreign to most of the people in my family, etc. So 2 questions. Where do you go for a mentor and what do you look for in a mentor? And has it got more lonely as you've, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I like socials is always a good avenue, right? So I don't think there's any one mentor that suits any one person. I also don't think that one mentor will be good for you at one level. As you grow, you will need other mentors that are at much, much higher experiences and been to other levels. So, and it doesn't have to be industry related, because all businesses come across similar blanket problems. It doesn't matter what industry or what size business you're talking about. There's still our teams, still our culture, still our marketing, sales, all of that. They're all still the same problems, whether you've got a $50 million business or a $500,000 business. It's just a bit more scaled outwards, that's all. But I think it's important just not to micromanage. If you feel that you have to micromanage anyone, you'll never be able to break that glass ceiling, because you don't know how to let go. You don't know how to trust anyone. And that all comes back to that culture start at the very, very start, you know, picking people. So when you're finding your own mentor, it's searching through Audible. Listen to your favorite books. You know, listen to read your favorite books if you like reading. Like listen to podcasts and hear what other people have got to say. And the ones that'll work best for you are the ones that will align. They're not trying to sell you a package for 6 months to get you on this like bigger and better small business course, which is super common. I've been to miles and miles of them, and they're all pretty much the same, but I only related to one person, which is my mentor now. Why? Because him and we both have the same basic values around family and culture and business, and the way our work ethic is, and the way we have a work-life balance all aligned. And that'll be different for every single person. So they will have to, you know, people listening would have to trial and error. You know, they will talk to these mentors, and they may spend 10 grand or 15 grand per mentor just to kick off a 4-week or 10-week program and not like them, and then have to do that again and again and again. But I think if you can listen to a few, and then if you're happy with what it resonates in what they're saying over several months, 3 or 4, 5, 6 months, and it's still in alignment with your values, then that would more than likely be the right sort of person for you.
It's kind of like buying something on Amazon where you're not quite sure if it's going to fit, and then you just have to take your chance. If it doesn't fit, oh well, you just buy a different one and see if that fits.
That's it. It's about to fail forward fast, right? It's still fail forward fast. You're still going to fail with a mentor and find another one.
Right. And it sounds like a lot when you say, oh, $5,000 or $10,000, and that's the vicinity that I'm spending as well. But there are some things like with the first serious mentor that I had, that I paid, I think, $5,000 a month for like 1 hour of mentoring a month. And this was US dollars too. The second month that we were together, he convinced me to put my prices up by 80%. And that made me $500,000 in the next 12 months, which was like, all right, well, if he gave me 0 additional advice for the next 12 months, he already paid for all of his sessions times 5, you know. So by that one piece of advice. So you don't have to have a very high hit rate to make your money back.
No. I think it comes down to other layers that you look for, right? Like finances is one thing, but I think if anyone is in any career solely for money, that'll burn out eventually at some point, whether it's 2 years, 5 years down the track, whatever it may be. There'll be a point where, like what you said earlier, what happens in your day doesn't change. Whether you've got $1 million in your bank account or $2, what's in your day and what your activities and who you talk to and who you relate with, that's all still going to happen, whether you've got the money in a bank account or not. So, all those other layers are going to be much more important above the initial success rate financially. So I think that's good to look for in a mentor as you go forth. And you may have 2 mentors. That's okay.
Right. And what you said there, like money solves money problems. Like I've been poor and I've been rich, and I much prefer being rich, but doesn't mean you don't have any problems. Now when I go to the supermarket, I enjoy not worrying if my card's going to decline. I enjoy filling up the car with gas without ever looking at the price, but it's like I still have to get on with my teenage daughter, and I still have to wash the dishes, I still have to put my pants on one leg at a time in the mornings. So many aspects of life, are just the same. I still buy the same brand of T-shirt. So just that, Amanda, there's something I want to ask you in a moment about letting go of perfection, because that's something you mentioned before about the sort of the delegating and growing. But before we go there, Simon, I just want to go back to that second question I asked you when about the piggybacked on the mentor, which is, has it got more lonely for you? I guess I want to ask this of both of you. Has it got more lonely for you as you've grown as a business owner? Have you found that you've got less in common with people, or they're just like, when my mum asks me how my business is, it's like, I don't tell her because she doesn't really want to know, like the new accountability metrics that we've, introduced. It's like, she doesn't care,
Yeah. Yeah. My cost per lead's gone up this month.
We don't tell our mum either. She, oh, it's good. It's busy, is it? That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's nice, darling. Yeah.
That's nice.
As long as you make time to call me during the week.
Yes, that's true. It's I'd say it's I would say it's not as lonely now as it was in the center, where you're still trying to find a network at your level. There definitely is I guess holes as you go along growing yourself, because you get to a certain level and you're at a platform, and then you're at the end of that platform, and you can either stick with it at that level or progress. But progression, you lose the people along the way that don't align with your values, and then you will find new people that align to your new values. So, yeah, that will change as you go.
And what you're referring to there, and I just want to come to you in a second, Amanda, what you're referring to there, Simon, I think is that as your business grows, and for me, I think this has been like basically every 3 and every 0 that we've had in the business. So 300,000, 1 million, 3 million, 1 million, 3 million, 10, and then hopefully 10 million again, is where basically you get to a certain level and you basically have to rebuild your whole business from the ground up, because all of your systems and processes break, and the people that you have in the business maybe that are good at running a $1 million business don't have the skills to run a $3 million business or a $10 million business or whatever. And so you have to basically level up everything and re-engineer it from the start. So that's what you mean by plateau, right? When you pass through that. So Amanda, how has this played out for you in terms of just do you still go out with your same friends and talk about the same things? And do you have people that you just can't talk about business with because they just don't get what the heck you're talking about when you talk about cost per lead or whatever?
I think, yeah, we don't have those conversations. I think I learned very early on not to push what I do onto my friends. So I'm very much a person that if you want to speak to me about your body or your nutrition or your movement or your pain, then I'm open to that conversation, but I don't bring it up because it's pushing your business onto your friends and family is usually not received well. So people know what I do, and if they don't, some do, some don't know what I do, and that's okay too. I'm okay with that because the people that come to me do know what I do and they like what I do, so that's important. But I don't think I probably don't have as much of a social life as I did, but I'm still okay. I'm still okay with that. I think as you grow, I have acquired different friendships in and I guess even in different arenas. So I've made some like friends in run clubs and at business seminars that we've been to. I've made some solid connections with people, and I love hanging around with people that are way more intelligent and know way more stuff than me, because then I can just learn. I enjoy those conversations. But like Simon said, we both have children and we both have families, and we're pretty busy. But yeah, I don't think a lot of those business conversations happen in friendship circles. No, not at all.
Amanda, tell me about delegating and letting go. I think you've both kind of mentioned in the course of this conversation that growth as a leader, growth as a business owner involves letting go of the need to do it perfectly and the notion that no one can do it as well as you can, and stepping back and allowing other people to fuck it up in their own special way. But maybe that's better than you trying to grasp and hold on to everything and being the bottleneck in the business, which is I've done. So tell me about your thoughts on that, and how have you experienced that?
I think that initially when you're a business owner, and it is true that you are very well invested into your business as an owner, and that no employee, I've been a business owner previous to this business as well, and no employee ever invested as much into my business as what I did, and that's part and parcel with owning a business. But I do prior to the mentor that we have at the moment, prior to that, we did have another mentor, and he taught us a lot around, working smarter, not harder, and the ideas around teaching others around you everything that you know in order to elevate them and to grow them, and to actually share the knowledge that you have is much more beneficial to you and your business than holding information and holding all the hours. And, there's only so many hours in a day that I can teach before I hit burnout. And there's only so many years that I can do that for before I hit burnout, or I miss my kids' soccer games, or I miss their training sessions. There's only so much that I can take. As a human, I need to sleep and spend time with my family as well. And there's a real benefit to sharing that information. And, I always believe whether an instructor has a year's experience or 20 years experience, they've got more experience than me in some area. And time teaching doesn't necessarily make you a great instructor. I think the ability to acknowledge your strengths and weaknesses and know what you do best. And I have other instructors that are better at doing things with particular clients than what I am, and I appreciate them. And when those clients come in, I know who they need to see. So I think it's a little bit of self-awareness as well.
I would agree with that. I'm interested to ask you, Simon, about balancing the trade-off between, I guess there's a balance between letting other people shine and sometimes just acknowledging that other people are in fact actually better than you at doing the thing, even though they don't do it the way that you would like it done. They actually do it in a better way. But at the same time, I think there's such a thing as abdicating responsibility. And I've done that in my business, where I basically outsourced our marketing at one point without having enough oversight over it. And that wasn't the fault of the people to whom I outsourced it, but they didn't do a great job because they didn't know enough about our business or our customer or our offer or whatever. And so how do you find that balance point between letting go and going, okay, maybe this person's going to do it like 80% as good as me, and that's good enough, versus like, no, this person's really going to fuck this up because my care factor is 1,000 times higher than their care factor. My knowledge of the business is 1,000 times higher. So how do you find that balance point?
I think coming back to that first point around hiring the right people, right culture, right feel, they've said on paper, hey, I can do this, this, and this. Fantastic. That all looks great, but can you actually do it? And, one of the big key points how I've moved forward is you have to be a massive fan of delegation. And you want to be able to give everything away. Otherwise, you can't grow for everyone else. You can't grow for the sake of the company. Otherwise, you'll just plateau. So delegating is one thing. And like I said before, not being a micromanager. People will stuff up. They won't do stuff as good as you. And there's heaps of people out there that are way better than you at those little jobs. Way better. And I reckon probably most of our team is better at me in all of those aspects. And that's totally cool. That's what I want. So that's all I look for.
It's excellent.
Yeah. You want people that are better than you. You want to be able to trust them that they can go off and do the job that they said they were going to do and they can do with your business.
Yeah, that's been something that's really been that has really been a game changer for me, is realizing, like, deep in my soul that the people I work with are actually better than me at what they do. It's like if I stepped in and said, no, let me do it, it's like I would actually do a worse job. I can't do it. It's like if I took over running our Google ads, or if I even some of the functions within the business that like I originally prided myself on, and this has been my experience, is I let go of the things first that I hated, like doing the accounting or, cleaning the studio or whatever. It's like you hire someone to do those things you hate and you're not good at. But then then you start to let go of things that you're actually pretty good at, like doing the website or, whatever. And then last you let go of the things that you thought, like, this is my core strength, right? And so like delivering the training, I now don't deliver our training in our certification program. And I let go of that a couple of years ago, but I'm now at the point where I go in, I look at the trainers we've got delivering, and I'm like, you guys are doing it better than me, right? This course has improved since I stopped teaching it, and that's a wonderful thing. And now I look at our diploma program, and I'm still involved in it. I give the lectures and I'm involved in the Slack, like I said before, but I deliver like 10% of the content in that course. And I don't do any of the tutorials or the workshops or the masterclasses or anything. And all of those things are delivered better than I could do it. If I look at the things that are being done, I'm like, oh, that's amazing what you do. I look at our training team. Same when I look at the sales team, the marketing, like the DevOps people, like the team is full of people who are smarter than me at the things that they do. And I think that's an absolute secret to growing a business, is you have to hire people that are smarter than you at doing the thing that you hired them to do. And some of those trainers that are now better than me at delivering the cert, I taught them how to do it. I was like, hey, here's this cert that I wrote. Here's how you teach it. Here's the lesson plan. And then I'd come back a year later and it's like, God damn it, you're better than me now. You've figured it out. So I think that I congratulate you on that. I think that's fantastic. I want to move gears now and shift to talk about the franchise a little bit, because that's something I think it's very an interesting concept. So why did you, like you said that you went into franchising because the partnership thing wasn't viable, and I'm with you there because I've had a partnership before that I now realize was not the right choice of people, and we didn't have it set up properly and stuff. So I think it's very easy to go wrong with partners. There's lots more opportunities to get it wrong than there are to get it right. But I think, growing by franchising is a very specific strategy. It's like, well, why not just grow organically by building more company-owned studios, for example? Why not just say, hey, we're not going to do a partnership arrangement. We're just going to grow it ourselves. We'll take like silent investors only or whatever. So why did you choose franchising? And yeah, I guess that's my choice. That's my point. That's my question. Why franchising?
Yep. Over if I was to go the other way and open my own 3-4 studios, get a manager, staffing and so on, your time is thinned out. You have a manager in any of these studios, or the person that runs the studio, their accountability is really, when it comes down to it, very little. To them, it's a job. Now, they might be passionate about the job, but when things come down to, the raw what am I going to do in life? Maybe there's a better thing out here, over there, or, is there something wrong with my family now? There's a priority here, over here. I need to earn more money over here. All that passion goes out the door, and now becomes another thing. But with the franchise or the franchisee, they own the business. It's theirs. They have skin in the game, right? So, and you can't beat that. Yeah. If you've got skin in the game, you have like real depth, not just passion, but you've got depth and real accountability that what's in your hand will affect you if it goes down financially. It will affect you personally. All those things, everything that goes on with that business can affect you positively in a large way or negatively. So, big accountability thing was one of the main reasons. How am I going to make managers accountable if they don't have any skin in the game?
And I guess I want to ask, what would you recommend to somebody who maybe has one or a couple of studios and is considering franchising as one of their possible future options?
Yep. Let's say think about how big you actually want to grow. Is it only 1 or 2 more studios? It wouldn't be worth it. If it's 10, 20, 50, 100, it's worth it, because you can't do all of that yourself, and you can't manage managers no matter how good you are at over 4 or 5 studios. Definitely not. So that would be where I draw the line, and I'd advise I would go in that franchise direction. But you still got to be willing to put large amounts of money in upfront and large amounts of time in upfront on the risk that it may or may not work still. So there's a lot of time and drive that's involved in deciding on going forward with a franchise. It's not an easy decision, but if you're someone like ourselves, where we're quite adaptable, we don't need to know the whole situation. As long as we're 80%, know what's going to go on, and we're 100% confident, then that's a good sign to move forward. So.
And I imagine you'd want to have a profitable business as a platform so that you could absorb that loss if it didn't work out, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like you still, like you said, it doesn't have to be 100% full. I wouldn't say that, but you want to be you want to be growing. You don't want to be plateauing at 3/4 of a studio, whatever size your studio is. And if that is actually the model you want to repeat, there's lots of things you need to think about. Is that actually what you want to repeat, or what would you change? If that wasn't your studio and you walked into it, what things would you change? And that really should be your model, not the one that's just was the convenient one to make at the time because that's what you could afford.
Yeah, I think that is such a crucial point. And I'm not sure if you read the same book I read, but I think it was Jack Welch or Lee Iacocca or someone who said basically they were sitting there at this, president of Chrysler or whatever company it was, and the company was going down the gurgler in the 1980s, or, they're basically about to be kicked out and replaced with, administrators. And he said to the vice president or whatever, like, oh, what do you think those guys will do once they come in and kick us out? And then it's like, oh, I think they'll do this. If I was them, I'd do this. And they're like, oh, well, why don't we just do that? And they did, and they saved the company, So I think that's such a great perspective shifting question is, what would I do if I came in from outside this business? What would I advise myself? Or if I hired a $5,000 an hour coach and they came in and told me just like the plain unvarnished truth about what I needed to do with this business, what would that person advise me? And often you already know the answer.
Yeah, definitely. And if you ask your instructors, they'd generally be pretty truthful if you hit them up.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
And it's like, what would you want in this year? What would you love to see? Or what do you think would make it better? And
even better, ask your clients.
Yeah, that's right. All of those scenarios, those layers, you'll get the right answer, and you'll see those common areas that are needed.
Yeah. You guys now at 3 franchises, 5 total locations. So you are really you're at square one of your snakes and ladders journey on the on the franchise ladder, right? So I don't know the ins and outs, and I'm not going to ask you about it, but I'm guessing that the money that you've invested in creating a franchise scenario, you're probably at break even or thereabouts on what you've invested, right? So you must have bigger aspirations for this. So what is the next goal? What is the next mountain that you're climbing?
It's funny, we look back at a newspaper article that came out, and Amanda and I were at the trampoline arena, and they said, new business that, they've been around, these guys are going to 60 studios in 5 years. And I looked at the date on the newspaper article, and it was March 2020, which is when COVID came out. So, yeah. But, we had a year to consolidate. We actually had a few more franchises, but we had to sort of consolidate. They were opening brand new right at the back, right just before COVID hit, where the fitness businesses were closed in Sydney. So that was a bit disappointing. But we consolidated in the last 12 months and worked on some very big plans and systems, and just got stronger and stronger. And we've just started marketing again, and we're already going to be looking at 60 studios on the east coast of Australia, and we've already looked at the first step is already succeeding as far as growing into the US, which will be going forward very soon. So this will be some massive growth in the next 3 or 4 years.
Wow, that's very, very exciting. And I guess that your role now really changes, because your job now is to not only market the end user, but actually you need to find franchisees. And that's actually a sales process where you need to do marketing to find those people who are interested, and then you need to sell them on the opportunity. So your business is transitioning from being a business where your business is selling Pilates and personal training. Now your business is selling franchises.
Yeah, I'm not only selling franchises, but I'm also selling at another layer territories now. Like, we sold a state in the US, and we sold a state in Australia. Like, there's other levels above that where that's what I am now. It's, I just look at it as selling a membership. Are you selling a membership, or are you selling a business, or are you selling an area? It all comes down to relationships, culture. That's never going to change. So I think if we stick with those brackets initially, we'll have good people and good teams.
And isn't it interesting that essentially the process and the skill of selling a $150 Pilates, 5-pass or whatever, is basically the same skill as selling something with multiple zeros on the end as a territory or a franchise or whatever. It's basically the same skill. And so it's where comes back to what you said before about sales and marketing being just the foundational skills of building a business. And if you can learn those and cut your teeth in, I think, selling your Pilates services, that is, I think actually in a lot of ways, selling fitness is actually harder than selling. Now, I've never sold a franchise, but I've sold financial opportunities. And I think it's much easier to sell something to someone when you can say, hey, if you spend $1, you'll make back $5, right? That's much easier. That's a much easier sale than saying to someone, hey, if you spend this $1, you can come and experience some pain and discomfort in my session,
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it definitely has its alignments, that's for sure. But I think they're just more layers when it comes to selling something with more zeros on the end. It involves more and more in-depth discussions and I guess a broader assessment before stepping forward. So
yeah, and as you move out into the US, I imagine there are a whole bunch of additional layers around. We've found this with like US employment law and taxation and currency exchange rates, and how do you measure your revenue when you're taking multiple currencies, and how do you manage that conversion, and where do you pay tax and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of additional complexity, I imagine, in building your business out there as well.
Yeah, and again, it was just finding the right people, find the legal teams over there. Like, I wasn't able to do legal stuff here. I'm not a lawyer. And I can't do it there. I still need another person. So to me, it's just another area. Like, I don't really overthink it. And I don't know, to me, yeah, it's always going to be people, right? get the right people, get the right teams, we all work well together, and we can all grow well together.
Final question. Where do you stand on work-life balance?
Pretty good, actually. I used to be a bit of a workaholic, but I found as my kids are teenagers now, and they will tell you what they think. That's for sure. If they need you to take them somewhere or down the shops or to the sporting ground or whatever it may be, and you need to be really good at making sure that you're aware of your time. So that time auditing I talked about, that compartmentalization I talked about. This is family time. This is work time. What can I deal with right now? What can I not control? All those little buckets you put things into. Delegating monstrous amounts of pretty much anything I can delegate, I'll delegate, because you have to. If you want to grow for everyone, including your family, and have your own family time, you need to delegate. You have to delegate and macro manage over micromanage. So that it's not bad, but there's several areas to look at. But I find I'm relatively good at it most of the time these days.
That's very encouraging to hear you say, and I really appreciate you sharing so candidly, and I'm excited for the journey that you guys are already. How far you've come. Which is admirable and a real outstanding achievement. Even if it all collapsed right now, which it's not going to, you've done an amazing job to get this far. That you're already in the elite of the elite of small businesses right around the world, not just in Australia. And this next step really is the next level. This is going to add more zeros to the whole thing. And it's interesting for me, and kind of like we said before, that after your bank balance has a few extra zeros in it, it's like it's fun and it's exciting, and I'd much rather have it than not. But ultimately, your day ends up playing out about the same, regardless. Your kids still get cranky at you and whatever, it's still the same. And so ultimately, when you have these ambitions like you do to grow from 6 million to, if you're going to 60 studios, that must be like a 10x, improvement in growth in revenue at least, that, it can't be motivated by money, right? Because it's like you've already got, once the thing about money that I've found is once you've got enough, more doesn't make any difference, So going from not having enough to having enough is a big difference. But then once you've got enough, having 10 times as much, just like there's no discernible difference. You can't be motivated by money. So what is driving you to grow this bigger? Why not just sit back and cash out and take your bank balance and go and sit on a beach somewhere?
There might be a work ethic thing. I'd just be it'd do my head in to do nothing, I think. But
but why not just leave it as a great, fantastic 5 location businesses generating great money and helping people and changing lives?
I think it stems from why you started being a trainer or instructor to start with. You started that because you want to help people. Franchise is no different. You build businesses. You're helping business owners build their dreams. Their dream is to help other people in a wider platform than just one client in front of you or a group of clients in front of you in that 1 hour. You can, as a business owner, you can help hundreds. As a franchise owner of multiple places, you can help thousands. Territories, you can help tens of thousands. It just multiplies. So it's that need for success to help people achieve their goals is what keeps me driven. Yeah,
that's interesting. That's very, very similar for me. Like my wife and I, it's interesting actually. My wife and I have basically the same roles that Amanda and you have, but reverse. So you're basically in the business. It seems like you're the operator. Like you make shit happen and you keep the business, people doing what they need to be doing and the systems and processes, etc. And Amanda's kind of more the face of the business. And whereas for my wife and I, that's reversed. I'm kind of the face of the business and she actually does the work, that makes it run. And we were talking recently and she said, okay, so we're going for $10 million this year. We want to, expand out to the US, etc. What about next year? What's our goal after that? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, she's like, what about 50 million? I'm like, well, I don't know. 10 million kind of feels like enough to me. It's like, how much do we need, you know? And it was interesting to me to observe in myself that's like, well, more money just wasn't exciting to me. It was like, why should I bother, you know? And then she said, well, but what about all those people that desperately need our help, you know, and that we would basically fail to help them by just going, okay, we're done, you know, that's enough. And I realized that, and that conversation has really catalyzed a big rejuvenation in my passion for this whole thing. And now I want to grow to 50 million, 100 million, not because I want the money. I don't give a shit about the money, but I've realized that actually, like you said, my impact now is multiplied. Where I used to work one-on-one with clients and I could help one person with their sore back or whatever. Then I ran a studio and I had a team of instructors. I could help 1,000 people with their sore back. And now I teach instructors so I can help 10,000 people with their sore backs. And now I'm looking around the industry. I'm saying all these instructors aren't making the money they want to make because they don't have the business skills. They don't get taught that in their Pilates certification. I'm thinking, what if I could teach these instructors to see like 5 times the number of clients and charge twice as much and have much more viable businesses? They could employ more people. They could help more people. And that has really fired me up and really, you know, got me excited about growing our business, you know, beyond, you know, the next kind of horizon. And so I'm totally with you. I think it's the impact that you can have, you know, once you get beyond a certain point, you've got enough money, whatever that means to you. I think it's the impact that, and also the work ethic. Like I would get bored as batshit just doing, if I retired, like what would you do all day? You know?
Yeah. I'll be one of those people that have a heart attack from going slow too fast.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Is there anything we've not touched on that you'd like to share?
And I think we've covered the bulk of what we need to cover for today. It's I think as you listen to podcasts from anyone, you can only absorb so much in one go, and the rest sort of skim over the top. So and wherever you are and whatever level you're at right now, there'll be a certain part of what we chatted about today which is relevant to yourself, and then you can come back and maybe in 3 months' time, there's another part that's relevant that you can now be proactive with in your own business. So, no, I feel we've covered the basics of it for today. I hope it helps. Hope it helps a lot of people out there, and happy to jump on if any advice is ever needed again.
You know what? I think that my sense is that what people listening to this will get is more around mindset than specific sort of how to, although there has been some great how-to stuff. I find that when I listen to podcasts a lot these days, I like the people and books and whatever, the people that I follow, I've read all their stuff already, you know, and I know what they're going to say. I know what, you know, if I was to ask them about pricing or marketing or whatever, I know what they would say. But I like to have their voice in my ears because it just keeps me in that mindset and keeps me surrounded by those influences. And I think there's a real value in just having that context and that being surrounded by that mindset. And so I think that even if you didn't have like any great pearls of wisdom to add, you know, I think just hearing your kind of laid back mentality, and it's like the way you think about building a business and running a business and delegating, compartmentalizing and moving on and failing forward and all of those things. It's like you can't hear that stuff too many times. You know, I mean, you could hear it 5 times a day and it still wouldn't be too much, I think.
No. And the more you listen to podcasts, the more you're involved in any form of mentorship, going to events, like any of those things, the more you go to the first 10, you're sort of hearing new stuff most times. And by the time you've done like 50 or 60 of them, it's as long as you can pick one gold nugget out of each event, happy days, you know, grab that, move on, go to the next one. So I think that's what it's about. It's not that, you know, every minute of every podcast is 100%, you know, in your next growth path. Just one bit will be.
No, and I think, you know, another thing that people might take away from this is that I'm sure a lot of people will, is that it's possible to make really freaking great money, you know, teaching Pilates. Like you don't have to work for $20 an hour at the local studio if you don't want to.
Yeah, that's right. Don't undervalue yourself. Be confident and people will pay what they see as value. So if you put forward value and put forward confidence, they will return that value in dollars and time, of course. So, yeah.
What a great place to leave it. Thanks so much. Really appreciate everything you've shared.